It is 5:30 p.m. and I will call to order the January 16, 2018 meeting of the MISD Board of Trustees. Thank you for everyone coming out on this cold day. As always, we will begin with a moment of silence, followed by the pledge to the U.S. flag and a new addition, pledge to the Texas flag. As we are now doing, much to our pleasure, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. flag and Texas flag by one of our junior ROTC students, who I have the pleasure of introducing to you now. Leading the pledge will be Midland High School junior Francis Bigger. Francis is a cadet second lieutenant in the Midland High Air Force Junior ROTC. He is a member of the Midland High School Junior ROTC Honor Guard, which serves as guardians of the colors by displaying and escorting the national flag on ceremonial occasions at events throughout the community. He also is a member of the MHS Cyper Patriot STEM team, and his class load includes ROTC 3, Art, Algebra 2, Physics, English 3, and Debate. Outside of school, Francis spends time flying whenever he gets the opportunity. Francis plans on attending Texas Tech University as a member of the ROTC Corps and then to join the Air Force as an officer. We'll call upon him after the moment of silence, if you'll please join me in that now. Thank you. Cadet Bigger, you'll please come forward. Thank you.
Please join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you, Cadet Bigger. Appreciate that very much. All right, any presentations, recognitions, or awards or announcements for us this evening?
Yes, there is one. President Davis, we want to recognize our Board of Trustees. January is Board Appreciation Month. We want to definitely tell you all thank you for the work that you do and the due diligence that you provide for Midland ISD, as well as for our city and our community, and for the districts that you represent. You've done a phenomenal job in that regard, and biased, I will tell you that I certainly appreciate in our team as well for all that you provide, not just for your family, for your professional endeavors, but what you bring to our school district. There's a little something that we provided in front of you, a plant that we hope that you will nurture and groom along the way, as well as the honor that our schools will do in your regard. So one of the things that our schools are going to be doing during this month of January, and will lead into February as well, will be a community service project in your name and in your honor. And each school will perform a community service project for Midland so that we can show our appreciation for what you do. So that could range from collecting food for the food pantry, whether it be community service, whether it be beautification on the campus or in the neighborhood. But schools are working through what that strategy and that plan is, and we certainly appreciate what they've done as principals to help lead that work for a community service project in your name. And we'll be reporting back what those projects all came to fruition once we get to the February board meeting.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you all everyone for the gifts and the kind remarks and the work to come, the community service work. Thank you all very much. All right, next, public forum, agenda item number 3. We have 2 veterans coming to address us this evening, so they are very familiar with the rules. First, I'd like to call upon Mr. Chris Gafford regarding the Dixie song. Mr. Gafford, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Like I said, my name is Chris Gafford. And I guess at this point, I'm just the local crazy guy who comes to every meeting, you know, and cries about Dixie. But I'm all right with that. Because if a man stands for nothing, he'll fall for anything. And this isn't about Dixie. It's about political correctness. And it's something I'm passionate about. Y'all started this distraction. Van Hooser started it. Riddick allowed it to happen. Y'all allowed it to happen. My attendance here every week is a result of the school district's actions. Now, I know that Midland Reporter-Telegram and Stuart Doreen in particular love Superintendent Riddick and think he has great ideas. And some of that may be true. I'm sure he does. But he also has some terrible ideas. And one of them was allowing this major change, taking away Dixie, a 56-year tradition, for essentially no reason. And I say no reason because we're told it was because of safety. But 27 million people on January 8th watched the NCAA football championship. And the University of Georgia was there. And their band plays the song, Glory, Glory, Dixieland. And they played it then, and not a single riot. Nobody got punched or hit or even cussed or spit on or shot or anything like that. Ole Miss, the University of Northern Alabama, the Citadel, all of them still play Dixie and have for a while. And yet again, nobody's getting hurt. Nobody's been hurt. Nobody's going to be hurt. Now, I'm not asking y'all to bring back a Confederate flag or anything like that. I'm not asking for anything anything crazy other than bring this song back, that we did away with for no real reason. Real quick, just some of the lyrics. I wish I was in a land of cotton, old times there not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixie's land where I was born, early on one frosty morn, look away, Dixieland. I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixieland, I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. And the chorus, there's buckwheat cakes and Injun batter, makes you fat and a little fatter. Look away, Dixieland. Then hoe it down and scratch your gravel to Dixieland. I'm bound to travel. Look away, Dixieland. Where's the part in there that's dangerous? What part of that? Nothing. Nothing in it is even remotely racist, which is what this is really about. It's about race. It's not about the safety of the students. We all know that. Everybody knows that. This whole safety aspect of it is just crazy. So this has been going on since August, and now it's time to do something about it. I ask y'all every time I'm here, let's put it on the agenda. Let's make it an action item. So now I'm very pointedly asking you, what do we have to do? What has to be done to get this on the school board agenda?
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Gafford. Appreciate you
No
coming.
answer?
Yeah, we can't engage in a discussion with you.
Well,
We can,
the rules do say that you can point me in the right direction or give me some clarification on how to get things done.
I'd refer you to my emails that I've exchanged with you and copied all those that you copied for an explanation.
So your emails say it's not going on the agenda, and so anybody that wants it there is just out of luck.
I would refer you to my emails.
Yeah, well, that's what it says for anybody that hadn't seen them.
There were sure a lot of people copied. I don't know who here wasn't copied, but all right. Mr. McAfee, welcome.
Thank you, sir. My presentation will be threefold, so I'm going to make it very, very fast with each 1/3 of them. First one is that in terms of speaking to the lyrics, that it's not offensive, doesn't hurt anyone, what have you. Well, those are subtle terms when you listen to that particular song, which was penned, especially Land of Cotton. Land of Cotton refers to a situation where we have a product in our particular country that we use free farm labor and free labor whatsoever to get it done. And I want to live and die in Dixie. I'll live and die before I let this go. And that was the cause of the rebellion, the Civil War, whatever you want to. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because that is not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about, first of all, the District of Innovation. I was privileged to be able to attend the meeting at Cento on last week. I was so proud. To see the teachers and everyone being involved, people in the community, and the superintendent and board members allowed that to happen. My third thing is that you as board members, I'm so very, very proud of you, individually and collectively, but I've always been proud of the board because I know your task is undone and you get no pay for it, and you spend countless hours giving back to the community. So I'm so very, very proud of you, and I thank the superintendent and the school administration for honoring you on this particular month or week or whatever it is, because we can never thank you enough for what you do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. McAfee. Those are the only two speakers we have this evening. So we'll move on to agenda item number 4, a public hearing regarding oil and gas request for proposals. The time is now 5:41 p.m. and we'll open up the hearing. Anyone that would like to address us regarding our request for proposals to lease property owned by Midland ISD? All right, seeing no one come forward, we will conclude the hearing at 5:41 p.m. and move on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda items are as follows: class size waivers, which begin on page 10 of our packet; financials, page 12; monthly expenditures, page 27; oil and gas request for proposal, page 50; personnel appointments, page 52; and board meeting minutes of our past board meeting, page 58. Do any of those items need to be pulled for any reason, or discussion, or any other reason?
Rick, I just want to make it known ahead of time that I'll be recusing myself because of for the oil and gas lease stuff, due to the fact that I have a relationship with one of the companies. Is that on there, the oil and gas lease?
It is there as a consent item, and thank you for saying that, Robert. Let's pull that, because I need to recuse myself also. Any others that need to be pulled for any reason? All right, so consent agenda items A, B, C, E, and F will be deemed approved by consent. Separately, for purposes of the consent, Ms. Vice President, I will recuse myself, and Mr. Marquez has recused himself regarding 5D.
So we will now vote on 5D. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, except it's unanimous. So we don't have any opposed.
Unanimous with the 2 abstentions, yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, district reports. 6A, board goals, constraint progress measure 1.1 begins on page 62 of our board packet. Mr. Jones.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
Pardon me, I'm working through Leah's tasks as well, trying to keep up with the minutes. Pardon me. Board members, this particular constraint is specific to implementation of professional learning communities. It reads, in all 5 elements of the PLC implementation rubric, at least 80% of teams at each campus will achieve or maintain refinement or internalized, and remaining teams will show annual growth by the end of school year 2020. This constraint measure was adjusted during the month of August, if you remember. Due to this change, we are only reporting on the process and not the progress of this particular constraint measure. The progress report is scheduled for this June, because we're giving a beginning of the year and an end of the year progress report. But I'd like to give you a little bit of background as we move forward. We're in our 3rd year of a 3-year phase-in of professional learning communities, known as PLC. Our first cohort included 18 schools. The second cohort included 9 schools. And this year, our third cohort of 11 schools are receiving formal training in professional learning communities. In respect to this constraint measure, we are using the PLC implementation rubric to measure implementation of PLC throughout the district. The rubric has 5 elements: collaborative culture, guaranteed curriculum, common assessment, ensuring learning, and enriching learning. These 5 elements are measured by each team on a scale from learning, 1, literal, 2, refinement, 3, or internalized, 4. All campus teams completed an early fall self-evaluation. Early reporting has given campus and district leaders strategic focus to work with teams more closely with PLC and ensure full implementation of and progress toward, of course, 4, 3s and 4s, refinement and internalized. Because each team did conduct a self-evaluation, out of that we can pull that our strengths identified are collaborative culture and guaranteed curriculum. And we do need to make sure that our coaches are focusing on enriching learning within those 5 elements as well. We will come back to you in June for a full report on whether or not we made progress on the implementation of PLC. Overall, this is a summary of where we are to date with our board goals, GPMs and CPMs.
And the PLC rubric was the result of last year's evaluation of that process from those that were involved in that?
No, remember we adjusted that particular constraint measure in August, and so we will give a beginning of the year, this year, self-evaluation, so we'll report out at the end of the year on the progress they made, the yearly progress, the annual progress for this year.
Okay.
So we are also reevaluating, do we need to continue to keep this particular constraint measured at this point in time mid-year, because we really don't have any data to report out, only that the self-evaluation was conducted.
But it indicates red, so the self-evaluation was...
That's the red from the previous year.
Let's go back to my first question.
I'm sorry, I didn't misunderstood your question. That particular piece is from the previous year.
Right,
We have
okay.
not measured this year yet.
All right, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, what was the measurement for last year? Were we, through the discussion we had?
All campuses needed to.
It was all?
All campuses needed to get a 3 or 4 in all categories.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jones. Next, agenda item 6B, financial update. Ms. Moss.
Mr. Davis and board members, I'd just like to give you a brief update on the district financials. This is the time of the year we're actually working with 3 different fiscal years. We're wrapping up the 2016-17 fiscal year. We're managing the budget for the 17-18 fiscal year, and we're planning the budget for the 18-19 fiscal year. The 2016-17 fiscal year ended on August 31st of 17. We've been working with Weaver, our external audit firm, to close this fiscal year out. There's one item I want to point out on this, and that's that we ended the year with an excess of $871,000 that goes to our fund balance. You'll hear more information later this evening from Mr. David Durree with more information on the 16-17 fiscal year. On the 17-18 fiscal year, it's our current fiscal year that we're operating in. We ended the month of December with $28.7 million in cash and short-term investments. In the general operating fund, the total for all funds was $43.3 million. And beginning with our January financials, we're going to include the interest rates for you to see, so that will allow us to be a little more transparent and to assist in determining where we need to move those funds. For the 2018-19 fiscal year, or the 2018-19 budget, we're currently working on that. We held a basic training this morning with our budget managers in regards to that. We've established a budget planning committee, and we also have a board workshop scheduled for February the 8th. During that workshop, we'll discuss superintendent and board initiatives for that next budget year. Our Skyward software implementation, we held our kickoff meeting last week. That went very well. We have an implementation team in place to help us get us converted to the new student software and finance software. Ms. Catherine Estrada is our project manager for the district, and she's working closely with a Skyward project manager. Our fiscal year change, we're working on that as well. We received confirmation from the Texas Education Agency. They've received our letter of intent to change the fiscal year. We've established a fiscal year end committee in an effort to ensure that we're covering all aspects of all the changes and what they look like. We communicated the change to the district's financial advisor, to our external auditors, and to Midland Central Appraisal District, notifying them of the change. And then I have one other informational item. We have hired a controller for the district. Mr. Arturo Valenzuela has joined our team. We're very excited about that. He'll come and bring to the table some internal controls, and as well as help with streamlining processes for the financial services department. Are there any questions for me?
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. President, I would like to say thank you, Ms. Darley, you and your team, for the work and hours that you all have spent putting this together. So I very much appreciate it on y'all's part.
Thank you.
Just one quick question relative to bullet 4, the
Yes, sir.
Skyward software implementation.
Yes, sir.
How is that going to make a difference?
In my opinion, it's going to make a big difference in our processing and how we get data out of the system on both the student side and the financial side. It's going to assist in our budget process. We actually met this morning with the budget managers, and historically they've just been given an allotment. We're working with them to where they can enter detailed information into Skyward and have access to that throughout the year. So there are many ways I believe that software will help the district.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I want to add one thing to what you said, because I want to make sure everybody heard that this year we added for the year that we just closed, we added $871,134 to fund balance. And looking back, and I did some comparisons over the weekend looking at those numbers, we cut expenses by $10,817,000 and some change. And if you take out the Chapter 41 payment, which we really don't control, we cut almost $9 million out of our budget on things we do control. And so I want to say to you and to the staff and administration and our teachers, they did a really great job, because we cut our budget about, what I figure about 4.7% on expenses on that side, and I think that's something the community asked us to do, and I think y'all have done a great job, so we appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Ms. Moss. Appreciate it. All right, agenda item 6C, innovation update, system of great schools. Information begins on page 72 of our board packet. Ms. Kale.
Good evening. We've had a lot going on, as you're very well aware of, with Midland on the move. I'm not going to go into detail on a lot of this, since we'll be spending some time coming up in a workshop on this information, but let you know we finished out the Listen and Learn tour with a very successful press conference. A call for quality schools is going very well. We're about to have interviews starting tomorrow with 14 separate entities, some of them individuals within our district. Our TNT partnership is going very well. They've really been a big focus on HR in the last couple of months and doing some strong work with them. And I believe you've launched your website, is that correct? The new website has launched for HR, which is exciting. Mr. Jones has kept you very up to date on what's going on with the District of Innovation. Our transformation team meetings have continued and expanded into some more subcommittees to work on the school performance framework. And then we're going to be creating another TZ Planning Grant Subcommittee. The communications with Midland on the Move are, I think, assisting as far as making the public aware of what's going on with everything we're doing with Midland on the Move and System of Great Schools and transformation of campuses, Houston Turnaround Plan, District of Innovation. All of that is being communicated out strongly. The Transformation Zone Planning Grant, of course, since the last board meeting, we were informed that we won that $450,000 grant from the TEA, and we'll be excited to partner with Katamba, which is Rajiv, and we will be partnering with him for 6 months to work on the planning in regard to that grant. The local accountability system pilot, we also were asked to be a part of that pilot with TEA with 20 other districts, and so we've started that process. The information systems conversion, Ms. Moss already alluded to that with Skyward. And then, of course, we're continuing on with our focus of the academic progress. So what's going to happen, what's going to be coming up in the future? As we talked about, the call for quality schools, the interviews are this week, and then we'll be moving forward with due diligence with those entities that are selected to move forward and look at planning and or implementation for the 18-19 school year. The TNT partnership will be continuing work with the Human Resource Department, and then additionally, we will be submitting the survey again to the Lamar and Travis staff, as well as some other staff campuses in regards to instructional insight. And then school portfolio review and management. What this is a process where we are reviewing quality seats in every school and capacity within the schools and what the needs are so that we can really track whether or not we're putting more kids in more quality seats in more schools. So that will help us with that. As far as what's coming up with the local accountability system pilot, Monica Hernandez, the Director of Accountability, has already taken a trip to Austin with Mary Janisek, our Dropout Prevention Coordinator, and Judy Bridges, our Advanced Academic Director. And they're teaching TEA how this should look. So they had a very interesting meeting and should look for some interesting information coming out. It was, I think they had some challenges on day one with all the 20 districts there, but I believe by the end of the day, they came to some good resolutions about how to proceed in this process. And we are certainly looking at how we can tie that in to the school performance framework to help us ease communications with the community, with you, and with staff members so that we understand the differences and the commonalities between those. And of course, finally, the most important thing, as Mr. Jones always said, keep the main thing, is academic progress and what we're doing there. And we're definitely keeping that a focus. Does anybody have any questions at this time?
The TNTP partnership.
Yes, sir.
Did was that mostly conducted survey-wise in the schools that are in RR, or was it district-wide, or?
It was actually 12 schools selected by the campus executive directors, so it's kind of a sprinkling across the district. Not all 4 IR schools participated, no.
Okay. In your opinion, you feel that there's, or has any information been shared in a way that you feel that there's been a lot of knowledge or understanding towards?
The information sharing from that survey will actually be in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
The fact that we are teaching TEA is an excellent note, but I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
And it's directed to you, Mr. Superintendent, if you want to answer. What are the possibilities of raising the ceiling on the number of kids that can participate in the Gifted and Talented program?
So I'm glad you asked that. We just had a conversation earlier today, Mr. Jones and I, along with Kelly Evanstein, just in regards to how do we open and make available seats in great buildings. And in reference to GT, we had talked about how we need to have more multiple, we need to increase the opportunity for parents in multiple iterations throughout the year to be qualified under GT, and not open up just a window, but open up multiple windows throughout the school year so that we can, in essence, backfill seats. So when someone does vacate a seat, there's an opportunity for someone to come in at that point in time. One of the things that we did, and when you look at your class waivers, you'll see what we've done in regards to, or we can share with you what we've done in regards to creating more seat access and opportunities in places, Carver being one, where we're increasing intentionally the class size because of the demand that we have from parents whose kids are GT, to show what that could look like, not just in our regular campuses, but also in our magnet schools. And so that number is sitting at 24, and that was intentional so that we can offer more seats in quality buildings and quality programs. So those are just a couple of things that we have in regards to that, as well as adapting our processes and practices. We have an instance in regards to if someone were to come into the district who was classified as GT from their school district, we would put them through another rigorous exam in our school district to reclassify them as GT. One of the things that we had as a discussion, and Mr. Jones took care of this, that if you've been identified as GT and received services in your prior school district, you are in essence ready to receive those services once you come into Midland. So those are just a couple of things that we've done in regards to implementing the GT practice. I've spoken to the GT Parent Teacher Association in regards to what that looks like, and shared very similar what I'm sharing with you in regards to the practices that we want to encourage parents and access and opportunity and exposure as well.
Now, my question is also pointed in the direction of to what degree are we moving, hopefully vigorously, to address the matter of diversity within those classrooms?
Yes, sir, and that's one that I've had as a campus visit. One of the things that we know through research that GT is not identified by the student, but often identified by the parent. And so we want to be sure that our team, administrators, teachers, counselors, are identifying students. So I've walked the campus and I've had that conversation with Ms. Carnett, who is the building principal, as well as the executive director, Ms. Lopez. Are we identifying every opportunity for students for diversity, whether it be male, female, socioeconomic status, or ethnicity, so that we can ensure that students who we would love to get into great programs have that opportunity, if not sought out by a parent. And that's a definite emphasis that the executive director has.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Would you go back one slide, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I told Mr. Riddick I really appreciate this report. I think we know a lot of good work goes on, but this tells us in black and white. I hope you're all getting enough sleep, because I don't see how you do all of this, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, thank you for all the hard work by everyone. All right, item 6D, facilities update. Mr. Riggin?
Thank you, Mr. Davis and members of the board. Just want to give you all a quick update as to what we're looking at some facilities within the districts of facility planning. Just want to remind you that our first meeting of the Facility Master Planning Committee is this coming Thursday on 1/18, and this begins and starts the work of that committee. That committee will will take approximately 11 to 12 months with a culmination of a report from that committee to the Board of Trustees. We currently have 27 members that have been identified to sit on that committee, and it has been recommended by 2 board members that we consider adding 3 additional committee members to that committee. It has been recommended that we look at a representative from elementary, a representative from the middle school, and a representative teacher when I say representative teacher from elementary, a representative teacher from the middle school, and a representative teacher from the high school to serve on this committee. With your understanding, the board's understanding, and without any consent with that, we will proceed with that request and add 3 members to that committee with your knowledge. We also, in that process of that committee, that's going to take time. There's a lot of work to be talked about, a lot of work, a lot of data that will be collected and received throughout the 10 months. And each of the committee members will be receiving what we're calling a workbook. It's a large book that has some basic data to start with, and every meeting that we meet, we will add additional information, additional resources. And as the committee grows, so will the workbook. With that being known, we would like to keep the board apprised of where the committee is. And with y'all's knowledge, we will also give you one of those notebooks. And after each committee member, or after each committee meeting, we will update your notebook also with a new index and anything that we have talked about in the committee. This way, it will give you some idea of where the committee is going, what we're doing, and what we're seeing and reviewing, if that's appropriate with you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
The other item, I just want to let you, we talked about our district growth. Since the second week of September, we are, today's enrollment, about 90 students above where we were in that second week of September. That growth continues to remain steady, and I just want to report that we have seen growth since the first of the school, and that growth remains steady. The last item I would like to just remind the board that we have a board facility workshop scheduled for next Thursday, the 25th. And basically there's 2 major items of discussion at that workshop. And we will be looking at our existing building capacity study of our buildings and the capacities that they are currently have. And also we'll be looking at possibly options for balancing the junior high school memberships at the 4 junior high schools and in comparison to their available capacity. And we'll update you also at that time about the work of the committee that happened the previous week.
Is the 90 students that have been added, is that mostly in elementary or in the
It's
upper grade?
across the board, but I think mostly in elementary, yes.
Thank you.
That's all I have today. Is there any questions?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move to our discussion or action items. First one is 7A, Annual Audit Report. Information begins on page 81 of our packet. Mr. Dree of the Weaver Firm, thank you very much for coming. Welcome.
Very good, Mr. President. I appreciate the opportunity to make a quick presentation to you and the board. And, you know, there's a lot of thank yous that need to go into this. So a couple is to your finance team, the Darla, Carla team, and the rest of that group. There's a lot of hours, a lot of effort that's gone into this process and to get us here today. We started out a little late. I need to thank the superintendent for being involved from the very beginning to the end. He was included in the management exit conference, and we appreciate those comments. The finance committee, y'all know that y'all spent some time the other day, a decent discussion about several items that we walked through in the finance committee, so appreciate your time, and the board, all of your time and service for the school district. So I don't have a presentation on the screen, but you've got a package, an audit result package. I'd like to get on the screen next time. It's actually easier to walk through it on the screen, but if I can, just take a couple minutes and walk you through the audit results package. There's no surprises from this report from what we did at the Finance Committee outside of the reduction of the significant deficiency down to a controlled deficiency and no findings in the report. It was a lot of effort, I think, that went into from management looking at the adjustments and the issues around taxes receivable, deferred taxes, and tax revenue. And when we walked through that and the team effort on y'all's side and our side, we were able to reduce that adjustment, pass on that adjustment. Remember we talked a little bit about past adjustments. Move that deficiency out of the bucket that was in the combination of deficiencies that got us to a significant deficiency. So the surprise here is a pleasant surprise. There's no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. Now that's gone through my team, through the work papers, through the quality control partner, the independent partner, and so we're here today. If y'all approve it, this report will go out as it is today. So with that, I was going to go to a couple things on page 9 of the report, just to remind the board that we follow auditing standards, generally accepted auditing standards. We follow governmental auditing standards. This is also done in accordance with uniform guidance. That's the single audit process. And compliance tests that are a part of our work papers as well. So you can see I'm skipping through this quite a bit. The audit process, I wasn't going to talk about that on page 10. I've got page 13 marked. Really, for this board, at the high level, our report is an unmodified opinion on page 13. So at the financial statement level, we have that clean opinion, that unmodified opinion. You can see there are no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no non-compliance at the financial statement level. On page 14, the report for federal awards is also an unmodified opinion. That's that clean opinion. The school was a low-risk auditee. Low-risk auditee is a function of how we get to the major programs and what we direct our time and attention in the federal and state program work. There are no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no findings that need to be brought to your attention for federal awards. You can see what our major programs were at the bottom of page 14. I've got page 17 marked, just a general reminder that if there were items in any of these buckets that would need to be in written communication to you, it's called a required communication letter. There are none. We have no irregularities or illegal acts, no transactions that we don't have authority for. We have no difficulties or disagreements in our audit. You weren't second opinion shopping, and we have no issues with independence. Now, on the independence issue, this year the firm was asked, Weaver was asked to prepare the financial statements. So the standards, the general accepted auditing standards, allow us to plug in, prepare the financial statements, so long as we can document the skills, knowledge, and experience of your team. Your management team will sign off and has signed off, has taken responsibility for all the adjustments that went into the financial statements, all the financial statements themselves that are behind the next tab. And they have the ability to do that. They have the skills, knowledge, and experience to do that. That maintains our independence. We helped with that. We pull away from that process, and then we audit it. That's a little bit different than what it's been in the past, where MISD has prepared the financial statements and the auditor has audited it. It's not a problem, not an issue, just a little bit different this year than we've had in the past. I've got page 19 marked, so I'm moving quick again. I've got page 19 marked. This is the fiscal year 17 revenues and fiscal year 16 revenues side by side. You can see 86% last year of our revenue came from state and local sources. 232 million this year. It's 227 million. This is at the governmental funds level, not the government-wide. Remember, there's two different kinds of accounting going on this. So this is back into funds. What I was trying to do is kind of just look at the funds that y'all budget and really pay attention to. I heard Ms. Moss kind of go through some things. I'm going to try to tie a couple of those numbers in as well. On the next page, well, I actually went to page 22 because we looked at revenues and what we had coming in. I looked at, on 22, I've got expenses in the pie chart, and we spent 49% of our expenses on instructional curriculum and media services in both 16 and 17, and you can see the other portions of the pie there. That shared services is the dollars that go back that we have every year. Page 25, the governmental fund balance. The general fund is your yes, sir.
I have a quick question on the pie.
On which page?
On 22.
22?
Yes. So is this is this a pie that's, structured by MISD or is it something that we meet TEA guidelines to, report in that way?
Right. No, that's a good question, and probably I should have done this to start with. These insights that I'm presenting tonight are not the financial statements. They're driven from the financial statements, right? I got the information from the financial statements, trying to summarize them. This chart that you're seeing on page 22, the expenses and the revenues both are from the governmental fund financial statements, right? Straight off of the government fund financial statements, which is prepared in a modified accrual basis of accounting, very, very close to the budgetary basis that y'all use when you talked about general fund earlier and the change in general fund. I can show you that 871 in this report. So these are not TEA charts, but they are driven from the GAAP financials that we follow TEA's FASRAG, the guide that they use that's also in accordance with GAAP. And so it's driven from the TEA numbers. They're very much in line with the chart of accounts and the structure that the TEA asks us to use, but the charts themselves are just charts that I put together.
Is it correct to say that the categories of expenses are driven by the TEA?
Absolutely.
The chart itself is just a depiction of the actual expenses in each of those categories of expenses.
That's exactly right. The numbers behind each of the slices are straight off of the categories that we report under the GAAP financial statements in those financial statements.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate the question. So that's expenses. I was on page 25 just looking at the governmental fund balance, right, of 49.6 million. General fund is the bulk of that, 42.8 million, and 85% of general fund is unassigned. We've got some restrictions on some of it, but 85% of it is unassigned. That 0.8% in the general fund, so this is in millions of dollars. So that's the 871,000 that I heard earlier that general fund increased. It's a 0.8 when you look at it at this level. But general fund increased that 871,000. It's included in that 0.8 at the bottom of page 25. Page 26, again, focusing on general fund at a high level. We had an adopted budget with revenues and expenses. That's the top line, an amended budget. And those financial statements that we were talking about earlier behind the tab show a budget to actual comparison, and I'd like to flip through that where the detail is. But then our actual, when the general fund came in 231 million versus 228, but there was $1.5 million transfer out too. So the difference between the revenues and expenses, and that transfer out is back to that $871,000 that we mentioned earlier. The tab, if you go past that tab, these are the actual MISD fiscal year 8/31/17 annual financial report. They include the auditor's report that we talked about. I've got page 9 marked. Remember the MD&A, the Management Discussion and Analysis, is about a dozen pages in the front of this report right after y'all's certification. That is a very high-level comparison and gives a lot of information about this 100-page report, and it's done in 10 or 12 pages. So if you only have a few minutes reading the MD&A, the Management Discussion and Analysis, of which page 9 is a part of it, is great information. It's got beginning of the year activity, end of the year activity, beginning of the year numbers, end of the year numbers, and activity that was in our 12-month period. So on page 9, at a government-wide level, right, we moved away from the governmental funds and did full accrual accounting over to almost business type accounting. Government-wide level, full accrual is on page 9, and you can see the 77 million net position this year versus 86 million net position in the prior year. And you can see the decreases in cash, capital assets. A lot of that's depreciation. Remember, depreciation is included in this one, but we also had reductions at the government-wide level. That $8.7 million difference, if you look at page 10, you can see the activity at a government-wide level, full accrual level, total revenues, $270 million in our year, 271, And in the prior year was 276, so we had a reduction in revenues. Expenses, and I heard this earlier too, and this is the government-wide level, not at the general fund. It's real easy to tie that number back in that I heard earlier in the general fund, but at the government-wide level, you can see the reduction in expenses as well. Expenses, not expenditures, but you can see a $8,771,000 reduction. So that took our $86 million fund balance down to the $77 million fund balance. So you can see a comparison at the government-wide level between the 2 years on page 10. And I keep referring to this page. I'd like to take you to page 62, if you would, just for a second. This is the budget to actual comparison in the general fund, our primary operating fund. This is the one that I hear you speak of today. You can see the actual revenues at the $231,000 we saw earlier. Expenditures at $228.7 million. I said thousand million. 231 million, right? 228.7.
What page are you on right now? I got distracted. What page?
I'm on page 42, 62.
62, okay. All right.
Sorry.
Let me catch up with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I go fast sometimes. So page 62, budget to actual. We
All right,
talked about the original budget, the final budget. I'm just looking at actual, and the 231 million of revenues, 228 of expenditures, and I heard the expenditures last year was 239. That's exactly right. Last year's expenditures at this level on this report was the 239 million, and it dropped down to the 228.77 million. You can see the $1.5 million that I mentioned earlier with the transfer out, and there's the $871,134 that increased in the general fund, like y'all were talking about. So I know we're talking about the same numbers. It's just that audit report has almost 100 pages. The rest of this we discussed. Page 87 is the auditor's opinion in accordance with GAS, and GAS being the government auditing standards. Page 89 in accordance with the uniform standards. Page 93 shows that we had $19 million in federal awards. That was what we used as a basis to start looking at the single audit and the federal awards that we needed to look at.
What page is that?
93?
I'm on page 93, 19 million in scheduled expenditures of federal awards. The next tab is the representation letter, so let me kind of slow down. The Finance Committee, I know, approved it the other day. I'm bringing it to the board. We're ready for the board's approval. There's nothing pending in the file besides this representation letter that we'll get signatures from. If y'all approve it today, we'll date the reports as of today. The file is ready to go today. The representation letter can be signed and dated today. There's nothing holding us up. We've got some we call it down to date stuff, some subsequent event type of questions that we want to talk about with staff. Won't hold up the report. There's a data collection form because this was a single audit. We'll go through a data collection form process, and it's your team and my team back and forth to get the federal awards out there electronically with the data clearinghouse. And there's a governance letter in the very last tab is the adjustments. We went ahead and put all the adjustments in. Most of the adjustments you see say PBC, and PBC means prepared by a client, right? So it's a team effort that goes into this, and I've already thanked your guys for the weekends, days, and nights, long hours that went into this. You can see all the adjustments, and the majority of those adjustments were your teams, 99% of them. So that's what I felt like I needed to bring to your attention. I'm here to answer whatever questions I possibly can. Other than that, just thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate what the school district is doing in our community.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
On page 15,
15.
you mentioned the fact that we had a misstatement in this audit process reflected on this page. What does that misstatement constitute? Two parts or one part?
Does it constitute what? I'm sorry.
A two-part situation, or is that one statement? The blue and gray.
Okay.
That
So
reflect two parts or one?
Yeah, no. So in my world, misstatement means the numbers either needed adjustment and were adjusted, or could have been adjusted, but didn't have to be adjusted. So this misstatement is one that was posted as a result of the audit. You can see it's immaterial. We did go ahead and post it. There are some quote-unquote misstatements that we passed on that were immaterial as well, but for whatever reason we didn't post those. We posted these. The standards allow us to do it. This is a one part misstatement that is being reported as an audit adjustment that came out of the audit process. All of those adjustments in the back that we saw, remember all of those, that tab that had just page after page of adjustment, the majority of those are PBCs. Well, some of them came from the auditors because we were helping with the financial statement and we did the conversion. I'm going to give you more than you want. We went from fund accounting to government-wide accounting. There's a bunch of adjustments there. This is an adjustment that bubbled up through the audit process. It wasn't material. It didn't cause a problem, but it was one that needed to be reported as an adjustment. It's called misstatements in a governance letter, in a 263A letter.
Thank you.
Sorry to build a clock when you ask a question. It's hard to answer sometimes. Good question. Again, thank you. If there's any others. And I'm here, so, I mean, we're just down the street. So if you've got questions, if there's something that doesn't sound right, look right here, just holler at me anytime. We start now to start thinking about next year's audit. And it sounds like we got a fiscal year change coming, so that'll be interesting.
Other questions? All right, this is an action item to approve the audit report. So moved by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Murray. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Ree. Ms. Moss, thank you for your entire staff. Appreciate all the hard work. All right. Next agenda item, 7B, resolution to approve Houston Elementary Campus Turnaround Plan. The information begins on page 82 of our board packet. Ms. Kale, welcome back.
Thank you. The presentation that is in your board packet is not the one that I'm going to use this evening, even though the same information is in there. I'm using the consolidated one from the parent meeting, just because it's a little more synthesized. Just to reiterate, for public purposes, a campus turnaround plan is a comprehensive change that is required to be developed for a campus that enters year 2 of improvement required. The plan must encompass a 2-year period and must show radical change that will make dramatic changes in student outcomes over that 2-year period. What is different about the Houston turnaround plan is typically when we do a turnaround plan and the way we've done it in the past is if the board approves the plan. Number one, you've never had to approve this early. It's always been in April. But if the board chooses to approve tonight, the Houston staff and the district is requesting that we immediately implement. Historically, and by statute, you're not required to implement unless the campus is improvement required for year 3. So come August ratings, if Houston is improvement required, then as a district we are required to implement this plan. If Houston meets standard, then the board can make the decision to implement the plan, modify the plan, or not implement the plan at all. That would be a board decision at that point. Houston staff and the district is requesting that the board immediately implement this plan to make the changes for the 2018-19 school year. So when we look at the overarching transformation concept of Houston, what we're talking about, we are asking for a redesign in spring of 2018 to turn Houston into a college prep elementary, with AVID being the foundational aspect for strategies within the campus. We want to look at reopening that campus in August of 2018. We are also asking that it become a pre-K-5 enrollment campus and that 6th graders, which are the current 5th graders at Houston, be allowed to attend San Jacinto Junior High next fall. All professional staff will be required to reapply for their positions according to the plan, which is called reconstitution. Some of you are familiar with that term from in the past. Additionally, all students will apply for enrollment at Houston Elementary. This will be a weighted enrollment process based upon some criteria that we're still working through. We haven't made finalized many of the decisions because number one, because of Christmas break, and number two, because we're kind of waiting to see what the decision from the board is going to be. But one of the things that the committee is definitely looking at is that current Houston students would automatically be given some weighted points toward enrollment. Additionally, part of the plan calls for collaborative planning with San Jacinto Junior High, with Early College High School at Midland College, with Midland Freshmen, Midland High, and with Midland College. Then an extra part of the plan is that during the 2018-19 school year, the campus staff will determine what wants to be their other special, basically around a curricular enhancement, and they will decide what that is, train throughout the 18-19 school year for implementation in 2019-2020. And we want to make sure that that complements whatever we're doing with AVID.
And that special is in addition to the AVID special?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That will be baked in from year one, from day one?
For year two.
All AVID?
AVID will be year one, yes, sir.
Yes, okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The way that'll happen is we would have an expedited staffing process this spring, and then all staff would be trained in the summer through AVID.
I do have a question, Ms. Kell.
Yes, sir.
How's this other than renaming the school, how's this kind of a twist to what we've done at Tommy Frank's school on renaming the school and reshuffling some teachers as well as our students?
Good question.
So if I can step in just for a moment, Dr. Kell. Trustee Bishop, one of the ways that it's different is that it provides the neighborhood an opportunity to attend the school. One of the things that we did with General Franks is we alleviated some capacity issues, and we put kids that were at Crockett at that point in time in high quality seats, but not necessarily in their direct neighborhood. We put them in De Zavala, we put them at Milam, as an opportunity to get into a great school and great learning and enriching, and we'll be updating the board with that. One of the other things that we did, and I've shared with the team, is I feel we missed an opportunity with General Franks, and we would not miss that opportunity again, and we're being innovative in what we can do currently right now as our community has asked. We opened General Franks just as a regular elementary school. Now, we did circle back and do some things with Franks by making it a Midland Values Project school, meaning that's become their signature plan for the campus itself, but that necessarily wasn't initiated in the very beginning as an opportunity to innovate it into something dynamic for the community. We, in essence, just opened school as school, elementary. So this really affords us an opportunity to think about what we can do to innovate a school when given the opportunity to really establish its signature plan and really establish itself for a stamp that could provide an avenue all the way. What we've not done with General Franks in that regard is it has the Midland Values Project essence, but there's not, in essence, a pathway that leads it all the way up. So one of the things that we're doing is developing a leadership model that kids can get into a leadership component that ties into what General Franks could help build, but it's not the build that we're doing in essence for Houston that would describe it as an AVID principal model. And so what I do is I equate it to coaching. And one of the things that we want to do with coaching is we want to build the skill set very early. And how early can you build this skill set? So by the time that you get to me, let's say varsity, you have a lot of the skills down. Now I just need to work with you on some techniques. So in regards to Houston, we want to establish what that skill set could look like for college readiness and develop that student to decide on a pathway that they could launch into that we've already developed and have accelerated in, whether it be the early college high school or their comprehensive school that has dual credit and AP standards built into it. So it just helps the mindset drive itself out very early, and we're being very intentional in regards to that with Houston, where we were probably unintentional in regards to Tommy Franks, and then started wrapping some things, incorporating some things into it as an opportunity.
think another exciting component of the Houston plan is based on the meeting that we had last week? Last week at Houston, the parent community meeting. We had over 50 in attendance, teachers and parents, grandparents, and some community members. And the questions that were generated from that meeting were very positive, very inquisitive, great questions. We've already posted all the questions and answers on the website to make them available for the community. And we've actually had, from this online survey from that evening, we've had excellent feedback across the community, and we've only really had one negative comment, and I think some education that I provided that individual through email may have straightened out some of the misconceptions there, but overall, very positive feedback. So part of the process in this transformation is that the board would have to vote to approve and do a resolution, sign a resolution this evening to be submitted to TEA, which I can submit as early tomorrow. The due date is January 29th. Unfortunately, I did talk to TEA. They will not respond to us till April in regards to whether or not they approve the plan. But if we're moving forward, I think we're moving forward. And so whatever feedback they give us at that time, we can make whatever amendments are needed.
Why is it that we don't have a response till April from TEA?
I was told that is their process.
They can't work fast enough.
Because I said, we're going to submit 2 weeks early. Can we have early feedback? No, ma'am, you cannot.
I wonder if we could get some input from the work we're doing to see if we can get an answer quicker.
We're in communications with them in regard, ever since this plan has been born and developed, I've been maintaining communications with some members at TEA.
Okay, I have a question there.
Yes, ma'am.
I changed slightly since Mr. Riddick gave his explanation. Could you give us some examples of what the curricular enhancements might be?
Oh, goodness. It would be Kagan, supporting strategies. Excuse me? Breaking down Wicker, which is the writing through inquiry process more.
So one of the things that you'll see as a curricular enhancement is AVID becomes a special for students. So much like students would rotate through their PE classroom, every student in the building from pre-K all the way through 5th would rotate through the AVID classroom. So AVID, it's very new for them to bring this approach down into elementary. It typically starts in middle school and into high school to teach kids how to prepare 2-column notes. So as an example, in the pre-K classroom, kids can start to learn conceptually 2 columns by organizing, whether it be Cheerios and goldfish, and starting to organize them, placing a line on their paper in pre-K classroom to start to build the foundational concept on how you start to build 2-column notes, and then it grows itself out. It would also talk about students and getting their feet onto a university campus and seeing what that aspect of learning could look like and be like and feel like as you progress through the model. And so how early could we have people come in and as speakers, as guest speakers, and how early could students take a field trip to a university, and what could that component look like as they start to see and feel and be what it means to instill a college-going atmosphere. The big piece that we would have is the AVID training, which would launch teachers conceptually, not just in a class, because as you build it up into middle and high school, it's a single classroom that kids would push and go into with one individual teacher who may have 120-odd students who come through 6 periods of a class. This would be every teacher on the campus would be an AVID teacher. So you would have that spirit of learning incorporated into every single classroom. So you would have to wait for students to go somewhere. You would be indoctrinated every single time you are in a class, whether it be self-contained or not, or as you progress forward and you start to rotate through classrooms. from PE teacher all the way through the principal, having that avid aspiration for where they want to drive kids. So that's the intentional aspect of what that could look like. And you would start to see with Ms. Rivera the aspect of how do we then start to infuse the curriculum along with that same inspirational thought. It's not that our pre-K kids are going to walk around with a calculus book. That's not the goal. It's just the aspect of the environment that you're trying to enrich and nourish so that kids have this fighting spirit, that they're able to do it, and then how do you make vibrant the curriculum as kids are attacking what that could look like. So there's some work that we have to do on our side as well to infuse what this innovation could be and feel like, and the team has been challenged and tasked with how do we make it very vibrant. A program like that has been built in Cedar Hill. It's very vibrant and flourishes in a great way, and Avid is a cornerstone for how that program has developed itself out. And our team has some ideas on how to even enhance what was built there for us here.
I would express that, without stepping my boundaries, obviously, that if we could ask nice, that's not a correct word, but nicer, I guess, the TA, I think it would show to get a quicker response for the plan would be their investment in what we've tried to do, and as we've tried to move forward also and at a rapid pace.
We will ask again.
If you could express that back to them, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And I think our relationship with TA affords us some opportunity and insight. And this is relatively new. This is not a standard that TEA would see across the state as a turnaround model. And so that's going to be something new for TEA to experience, because there's not a lot of places that you can identify that have pushed this model out. And so that's going to be learning for them as well. And I think they've taken our lead in response to how we try to how we're progressing as a school district through our risk-taking and innovation and our due diligence. I think if we were making a wrong turn, they would let us know.
Yes, I would also like to add that we've been in conversations with TEA about the plan since it started. However, the individual that we worked with, which some of you know, Mr. Larry Johnston, he passed away right after Christmas, right before the January break started, and he was directly who we were working with. So I'm working with a new individual, but I've also been in discussions with Joe Seidlecki about what is happening and received verbal confirmation, as well as Rajiv has dropped some information to them.
Thank you.
Well, two things. Am I correct to say that one, they're not going to slow us down in moving forward while we await their official word that may be as late as April, correct? We're not going to wait. We're going to move forward as if it's going to be approved.
Yes, sir.
And two, based on your discussions you had with Mr. Johnston, and may he rest in peace, and the other folks at TEA, they've given no indication that they have any big objections to us moving forward with this plan, correct?
That is correct, yes,
okay.
sir.
All right, great. Any other questions? All right, this is an action item to approve this turnaround plan and execute the resolution to be sent to TEA.
Second.
Is that Mr. Bishop, motion by Mr. Bishop, second by Ms. Nicholson. Any discussion? My only discussion is to compliment Sam Houston folks for really organically growing this themselves, coming up with themselves, and also, you know, really thinking what's best interest of the students. I know that's always your focus, but coming up with a out-of-the-box plan like this is really, y'all are to be complimented. Thank you very much. All right. What? Yes, I said Sam Houston, yes. All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
All right, board self-evaluation. I'm going to try and streamline this as best I can and only address the categories on which there is less than 4 votes. So with that, you know, we have where we currently stand, and this is all on page, 148. We have 2 aspects to this, where we currently what we currently achieved, I guess, or what we have achieved during this past quarter and before. And then secondly is what we hope to achieve in our next quarter. Looking at the proposed scores for each of the categories of what we achieved this past quarter or earlier, the only 2 areas of disagreement are accountability 2 and structure. On accountability 2, the reason I would submit that the reason we still remain at 0 on that one is the same reason as before, and that is that because of the circumstances of having an interim superintendent and a new superintendent, we have not done a superintendent's evaluation utilizing our board goals, constraints, progress measures, etc. And I've confirmed that with A.J. Grable, Deputy Commissioner TEA, that that's correct. So I think as much as it pains us, we're going to remain at 0 until we have the pleasure of evaluating Mr. Reddick this spring.
What?
All right.
Well,
Unless there's any further discussion.
there's 2.
There are others, but you have to achieve them all.
So there's 2 questions, you know, involved in that. I wish I had the.
Right.
Yeah, because, so I think there might be some confusion, but so one's like quarterly or during the year, and then one's at the end of the year type evaluation. So, is there any way maybe we can get a little more clarification if one of them is supposed to be done during the year, even though even though we're I mean, the constraint is, you know, I can understand the time of the evaluation at the end of the year, but the other one, it seems like there's just, you're not getting nothing out of it during the transition point, you know. They should, you know, because all the goals have been set and we're monitoring and we're talking about it. So we should begin, we're doing them, but it doesn't seem like tying the evaluation and both of them to the superintendent evaluation seems kind of like a little bit incorrect to me, but maybe there could be some more discussion had down the road about it.
Well, I agree that the language is such that if we had conducted a superintendent evaluation this past quarter, evaluating him on the basis of our student outcome goals, progress measures, et cetera, that we could have checked this box. But 2 things. One, we didn't even do that, and more importantly, for good reason. I think that it would, particularly in light of a new superintendent, it's only fair that we evaluate him after, you know, the better part of a school year, not only half a school year. So we might have opportunities next year, if you will, next school year, to take advantage of perhaps some interim school year evaluations, but the bottom line is we didn't do it this quarter, and I would submit that we shouldn't have done it this quarter. It would be too early under these particular circumstances. So, all right, then unless there's any more on that, then we'll move to the other one that needs some discussion, and that is structure. And the problem with scoring higher than a 4 on this, on structure, is that while it is true that we have engaged in an installment plan, if you will, of reviewing our local policies to eliminate those that aren't shouldn't be in policy but should instead be put into regulations or administrative regs or so forth. I confirmed with Leah today that we have not completed reviewing all our policies, and so we have not yet completed that review, nor have we completely voted out all the current policies that could be instead put in administrative regs. So that's why we can score no higher than a 4 on this one. All right. Okay, so that would complete our quarterly score for this past quarter would be 75, which is an increase. Now, turning to our goals for next quarter, the two areas of disagreement are the same. One is accountability. We will not complete, I'm submitting that we will not complete that superintendent evaluation in this next quarter by the end of March, although we'll be close. We'll be getting ready to. And so I'm submitting that 0 is still our score for a target next quarter. All right. And then the structure on 4, same thing. Leah does not anticipate that we will be able to complete all the review and all the policy changes by the end of next quarter. So but we did have an increase in advocacy because we do hope to conduct in this next quarter those on our campuses about the Lone Star governance and report on that. And so that's why advocacy would go up to 3. So our target score next quarter would be 77. All right. This is an action item.
So moved. Second.
Adjusted to, what, 75 and 77?
Yes, sir. Motion by Mr. Kennedy to approve that, those totals. Second by Mr. Marquez. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, next action item, unfortunately. The next two are unfortunate ones. 7D, teacher contract abandonment. 1, good cause did not exist for resignation. And 2, complaint and request for sanctions to be sent to TEA regarding an M key.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, board members. These are one name, actually, 2 total that we have conferenced with, and just cause it was not presented for resignation and therefore considered job abandonment and pursuing sanctions on these 2.
Action item.
You can separate.
I think we need to do them separate. Motion by Mr. Marquez, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. Last action item before closed session, 7E, teacher contract abandonment. Good cause did not exist for resignation, and complaint and request for sanction to be sent to TEA regarding M. Price. Motion by Ms. Nicholson. Second by Mr. Marquez. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, it is now 6:54 p.m., and we will go into closed session in accordance with Government Code Sections 551.071 through .074 and 551.076 and .0821 through .084. Thank you. It's 7:53 p.m. and we are emerging from closed session and we are adjourned. 7:53.